Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. We have a special guest with us today. Richard Chycki's here.
Good to see you.
Great to see you, too. Glad to have you back here at Sweetwater.
Oh, thank you. It's always nice to be here. And it's not snowing, so it's perfect.
It's raining, but it's kind of close. As long as there's precipitation, that's what really matters, right? So you were here this morning talking with the sales engineers about how you use Mojave and Royer microphones to track the new album from Dream Theater, The Astonishing.
Yes.
And we've got some stuff here for you to check out. Richard has brought in some photos of how he mic'd the grand piano, the Leslie speaker, as well as how he used ribbon microphones on the drums. So let's take a step through here and tell us kind of what you were thinking in your approach as you were working on these tracks.
Sure. Well, this is the grand piano that we used for the album, because all the instrumentation, everything on the album is real. It's a very organic record. So all the orchestra is real, all of the choir, everything is real. So in keeping up with that, Jordan played grand piano and he played B3. So again, organic choice of instruments for this album. So here I've got a Royer SF24V, right? And this is a Blumline microphone, so it's set up to cover the piano. And there's a pair of 87s that these are set up in a much wider configuration. And this was set up during at the tracking phase because, quite honestly, wasn't sure. It's like, let's see what kind of spread that we get from, because pianos are, every piano is different, right? So really wasn't sure. So we have these two variations over the entire soundboard. And then if you look up here on the far left side, there's a pair of Earthworks SR40s. And those are over top of the hammers. And that's for brightness and percussive effects. If we, again, this is using the same idea as when the guitars were recorded, that rather than EQing a ton of, say, 6K onto the piano, you know, we're just going to add a little bit of the SR40 to get a little bit of attack and brightness without making all the other microphones bright. Okay.
So tell us a little bit about what the aural or sonic result was between the spread pair and the single point microphone.
Well, the 87s have that, because of the spread that they have, there's more of that feeling of width with hole in the center, because literally that's what's going on. These are both cardioid microphones, and with their response, there's a bit of overlap in the center, but not a lot. So you could detect almost like a hole when you're playing in the center area of the piano. Now the SF24V doesn't have quite the same amount of spread, because physically it's the capsules are aligned right beside each other.
Right.
But it's a lot more of a natural feeling as far as the width of it goes. And it literally was, most of it is the SF24V with a little bit of the 87 to give it the extra width. Right? And then the SR40s were brought in and out of the blend, dependent on if Jordan's playing a part with light dynamics. In a lot of the cases, we would take the SR40 out because they felt a little bit too aggressive, pulling away from the sensitivity of the performance.
Got it. Let's take I think we have another shot here. And I was interested in this shot because we can see how far away from the piano you are vertically.
Yes.
How did you judge that distance?
Well, this is, right here, this is to avoid, we don't want to get any sort of proximity effect here, because the piano is going to give out a certain amount of mechanical noise from the mutes and from the hammers hitting the strings. We don't need to get that extra thud, low-end thud, because the microphone's picking up any sort of proximity. And the piano, the sound really does has to develop. If you put the easiest thing to do, which sounds very odd, is if you put your head close to the piano, once you get really close to it, it starts to feel unnatural. Right? So there was that idea of, okay, so where are we going to place these so that we combine it so that it feels intimate, yet it doesn't feel like it's an unnatural type of sound.
Right. Yeah, you don't hear a piano that way.
No.
You hear a piano from back in the room, so capturing some of that space gives it more depth.
Correct.
All right. What do we have here? A little different view of how the microphones were placed. So you've got the 87s aimed, looks like more on the bass strings on one, high strings on the other.
Correct.
And that's where the hole in the middle then where the...
Correct, and then it's filled in. The SF24V carries most of the weight here, and it's actually in reverse to what we're discussing. These two guys the 87s are added in on the outside to give it the extra width, and it's really the 24V that's carrying most of the tone of the piano.
Which really that's a pretty traditional placement for a microphone at the bend of the the grand piano to capture that overall sound. Yeah, you go with what works, right?
Correct. I'm not trying to the piano, the Steinway is an amazing piano, so you know, it's a great tone, and Jordan's an amazing player, so it's literally get the sound right, and stay out of the way.
Now, were you tracking this at the same time as the other instruments? Are you isolated here, or is it in?
This is a completely different studio. This was a studio in Astoria, New York, and we were looking for a piano, and somebody had a piano and a B3 that was in great condition, and we found these guys and brought in the Royer and the Earthworks microphones.
Great. So here we see the Leslie speaker. It looks like you have 3 microphones going here.
Yes, sir. On this, I use a pair of 121s, and they're pulled back. There'll be another photo. You can see the distance way. The 121s are pulled back so we don't get any wind from the horn spinning. And then the drum at the base is mic'd up with a 421. So we get the stereo spread here, and it's not on opposite sides. So again, it's wide, but it's not unnatural. So if we put them on the outside, it really gives this radical panning. And so here we can pan this hard left and right, and it sounds wide, but not unnatural.
So they both are, it's a little hard to tell here in the photo, they both are on, I guess, what you would call the front of the cabinet. This one almost looks like it may be pulled around side. But
if you zoom to another shot, you can probably...
There we go, sure.
So this will give you an indication. That looks like we're about 10 inches back from the cabinet and toward the corners, but still over near the louvers at the top.
And this, it looks like you're turned just a little bit off axis.
Yep.
Or is that
it's in axis, actually toward the center axle of the horns.
Okay. And I have heard a lot of Leslie recordings where there is audible wind from either the top rotor or there's thumping from that bottom cone that twirls. Are you doing anything on the bottom with the 421 to prevent that thumping from showing up on the bottom end?
The thumping, I mean, a lot of it is depending on who's been working on the Leslie. You can get a bottom end thump from the relay changing.
Okay.
So when we looked at this instrument, this was in great shape. Relay switching is quiet. Again, this is pulled off. The mics are pulled off so that the 421 is a dynamic cardioid, so you get close, you're going to get proximity effect. So if there's any low end at all from a thump from it changing speeds, it's exaggerated by getting closer.
Okay.
Right. So this allows it to breathe a bit, and we don't get that odd transient behavior.
So the moral of the story with the Leslie is to not get too close in, to kind of give it a little bit of space for that air to move.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Right. Right. Let's go on to see what we have here next.
Ooh.
So this is a compact drum kit that you looks like you have a couple of microphones on there.
This is nice. We use 2 microphones for this. This is the Mangini's kit. This is I mean, it's a very complex drum kit. He's got eight toms here, 8 toms and 4 octos, and I have some spot mics in place. The Royer, the 121s on the outside here and over here, they're putting in most of the imaging overhead for cymbals, right, for cymbals, and this is phase accurate to the center for the snare. So this is all measured. It's a little bit tough to see in the photo, but this is all measured so that they're exactly the same distance from the snare. So that in the sound field, when we listen to it, if we have a sound arriving at the same time to both microphones, then we're going to perceive that sound to be in the center, right? So we can actually really turn up the cymbals in the mix. Especially with the Royer, with the frequency response to the Royer, we can turn it up and we get a lot of cymbal sound, and the snare doesn't shift image at all.
And you may have mentioned it, I may have missed it. Which Royers are these on?
These are the 121s.
121s? Okay, and those tend to have a pretty warm top end to them.
They do.
Are you EQing those then once those go into the mix, or how's that approach?
Very slightly. There's a little bit of a 10K bump that was added as far as EQ goes, and then low end taken off. Not a lot. They're not super thinned out, but just the low submaterial was pulled out, because I didn't want to pull away from the bottom end of the snare or anything like that. But just the low end subs are removed. I mean, the microphone is inherently a pleasant sounding microphone, so we don't have to worry about having. I mean, you can see how many cymbals Mike has in his rig. So we didn't want to have all of this 3K harshness, and then we're trying to EQ it out and stuff. So this microphone choice allowed us to really capture it without it being overbearing.
Right, right. And then you said you had some spot mics, I'm assuming, on the kick, the snare, and do you have the toms spot mic?
Everything is mic'd up, close mic'd as well. There's all the toms are close mic'd, all the octos are close mic'd, and the kicks have a two. I can't remember if it's 2 or 3. I'd have to open up the recall of what it was. There's a set of mics in the kick that are all inside, so it's tight.
All right. And are you tracking all of those to individual tracks, or are you committing to a blend of those as you're recording?
The kick drums, a combination, a composite like that, that's recorded to a single track.
Okay.
Snare, I've got mic'd top, mid, and bottom. And the top and bottom are pretty conventional. The side mic it's by itself is a tremendously ugly type of sound, but it's just to capture the body of the snare tone. And that's going to vary to whether the producer wants, I want that snare with I want to hear the resonant frequency of the snare, the ring. Some producers like it, some don't. So I always have that in case and leave it up to the producer's discretion.
Okay. And how are you approaching maintaining phase between those close mics and those overhead mics?
Okay, the main issue is the mics that are open all the time are going to be the ones that are critical, right?
Okay.
So staying critical, the overheads to the snare are critical. I mean, Mangini has a stereo pair of kick drums, and so his kit is very linear when you look at it. His toms are arranged in an inverted V, as opposed to an arc. So his kit is very much almost like a mirrored type of kit where it holds itself to having a strong stereo image. So it literally is getting all the mics set up so that they're phase coherent to the center of the kit.
Okay. So he's got a phase coherent kit. I like that.
Yeah, it's nice. As far as other spot mics are used only when if Mangini has something like a large China cymbal and then he has a 6-inch splash immediately beside it, might add in a touch of 6-inch splash into the mix in order, because when he would switch, say, from a China to the splash, he's going to really have to hit that splash hard to compete.
Right.
And once you get to a certain point of hitting a cymbal, it doesn't sound really musical anymore if you're really beating on it hard. So he would, we would add a spot mic so it sort of lessens how hard he has to compensate.
So you mentioned that a lot of it depends on which mics are open at a given time. Are you going through and automating, like for example that splash mic, so it's only on when he hits the splash, or are you editing the tracks, or how are you doing that?
Okay, that's a good idea. The tom, let me first start by saying all the toms we automate the toms not completely down. It's almost like a 15 dB that they're all closed down, and when a tom hit comes in, they open up and then shut back down. And that's automated as opposed to using a gate because it's reliable and it's stable. And if he's doing something dynamic where he's doing a build, we won't get any chatter or any hysteresis side effects. None of that'll happen. So that's all done manually. Drives my assistants nuts, but it sounds great.
Imagine so, yeah.
Right. So as far as the other mics go, it's on a case-by-case basis. If there's something where it's a track where there's a small section where he's doing a hit on a small cymbal, then it'll be brought in for that. If it's something where it's a major part of the song, we'll deal with it. We'll deal with it and leave it open.
Okay, I see.
So,
all right. So this is a view of the room mics, and you've got a really interesting configuration here.
Well, I would like to take credit for this, but it's not my idea. This is what's known at Royer as the Ross Hogarth method, because this is something that he's come up with, and it works great. It sounds fantastic. This is the SF24V, and this is a Blumline configuration, and just by virtue of the way Blumline works, if you have a sound, say from a snare that's dead center, if it hits the microphone dead center, that's part of what's the phantom mono, even though that's not a mono microphone, which sounds fantastic. But adding in the 122V, it adds a center lobe in the front and rear, because it's a figure 8 pattern microphone, and the 24V is a pair of figure 8s configure Blumline, right? So the Blumline, and then you add in this front and back lobe. So you end up, what I would say is like an inverted W. Okay. A front W and a back W, where this takes any core elements like kick and snare and makes them project more within the image. And when this is being submixed down, it's literally, you hear this really wide image with the SF24V, and then just start to bring up, this is a 122V, you start to bring up the 122V, and all of a sudden you feel if you go too far, it starts to feel mono, but all of a sudden the mono elements, like the snare and the kicks, start to become more forward within the stereo field.
Okay, all right. So you've got a stereo microphone with a mono microphone above it, and both those are tube mics, correct?
They are.
And what is the thought process of choosing a tube version versus a solid state version?
Well, the 24V is one of my favorite mics. For if I had more of them, I would be using them in overheads. I would just tell the guys at Royer, send me 5. I need more. So it's a really great sounding mic, and the 122V is also a really great sounding mic. It's a little bit more of a colored sound. When the mic is pushed harder, I don't want to say that it's not an apparent saturation, but it's a sound that's popular. If we use a U47 or an Elam 251 or any tube mic, there's inherent coloration and saturation when the mic gets pushed hard, and that's what these mics do.
Okay.
And it's a really pleasing sound, and it allows it to be color the sound. So we're actually compressing less. We're doing less. We have to do less to the track to make it breathe and pump.
Right. Yeah. And then we've got another shot here of the overheads. Kind of see the
correct.
The
this is close to the. This is on the left-hand side from camera perspective. This is the left-hand side of Mangini's kit, and this is the 121. And you can see way off in the distance is the other 121. So that just shows you the size of the kit.
Right. So when you come to mix down with an array of microphones like that, how are you balancing between the spot mics, the overheads, and the room mics? Is there tell us how you're doing that.
Well, that's a great question. Most of the weight is carried by the overheads.
Okay.
And then the spot mics do exactly what they say. We fill in any issues that and Mike would be able to point it out, where he says, I'm hitting this splash and I need this. I need the splash to speak more. Go in, look at where the spot mics are, and start adding it in until it's just enough. But the image, the actual image, overhead image, is done by the Royer 121s.
Okay.
Right, and the same thing happens with the room mics. That because the performances are so busy, it's not like we can have a really big washy room going on. So it's adding it in so the kit is breathing and it feels alive, without the ambience overtaking the drum kit.
I was wondering about that, because
so
obviously it's complex.
And it's a balancing act. It's one of those things and it can change from song to song, where there might be a part where there's a verse that tightens up, or pull the room mics down, and there's a next section where it's going to open up, and Mike's playing opens up, and the room mics open up at the same time. So that's a popular mixing technique in order for us to get the kit to feel like it's moving.
Right. So are you doing those mix moves and those adjustments in the context of the whole mix, or are you soloing all the drums out and balancing them that way, or how do you approach that?
How I'll approach that in a mix is that's done with everything playing. I find that if I were to do that with the drums, if I were to listen to the drums soloed, I would undermix that. So the moves are exaggerated. If you listen to it by itself, you go, wow, that room mic really comes up. But within the context of the song, because mixing is exactly that, it's mixing. It's making that giant compromise so everything can live together nicely. So I would do that, the initial pass I would do like that. And then I might listen to it and I'd say, I just want to see when I'm turning that up, if there might be a cymbal decaying and it might be something unnatural where all of a sudden there'll be a cymbal decaying when I turn up the room mic, so you hear something that's odd. So I'll check that, but I'll do that within the confines of the song. Okay, right. So basically you have to do that within context. Yes. To make that work properly. Yes. Awesome. Man, this has been like a master class of how to approach doing this. Well, it's been a lot of fun. I like talking about it. Yeah. Well, clearly you've thought this through and have highly refined your approach. So thank you for sharing that with us. And there's so much we can all take away for our own productions. I think so. We're very grateful. Oh, I appreciate it, man. I encourage everybody to experiment. With something like this, it's a great opportunity with amazing players that have. There's a sharp focus of where they want to go, and it changes from record to record. So it's always a great challenge, and for me, it's always an educational process. So never stop learning at any age. I imagine, and it's got to be a blast too. It's awesome. No complaints. Absolutely. Great to see you. Pleasure. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. And thank you for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Mitch Gallagher.